The Alpha King was mid-hunt when a trembling young wolf ran into his path. The forest went silent. The sacred law was clear. No one interrupts the hunt. But the boy dropped to his knees, voice breaking. They left my mother hanging in the woods. Ryden Blackmore froze. Because wolves punished that way were never meant to be found alive. And in that moment, the Alpha realized this wasn't a plea for mercy. It was an accusation. Before the story continues, take a second to like this video if you enjoy emotional werewolf tales. And subscribe for new stories every week. And tell me in the comments, where are you watching from? And what time is it there right now? I love seeing how far this pack reaches. The moon hung full and merciless over the border woods. Ryden Blackmore moved through the ancient trees like smoke, silent, inevitable, alone. His breath misted in the cold air, each exhale deliberate and controlled. The sacred hunt demanded stillness of mind. No guards. No witnesses. Only the Alpha and the wilderness that had tested his bloodline for generations. He paused at the edge of a clearing, nostrils flaring. Deer. Young buck, downwind, unaware. His muscles coiled with predatory focus. This was the one night the pack could not touch him. No petitions. No council posturing. No carefully worded requests that were really demands. Here, in these woods, he was not a politician in wolf's skin. He was what an Alpha was meant to be. The buck's ears twitched. Ryden's eyes gleamed gold in the moonlight as he prepared to strike. A branch snapped. Not the buck. Wrong direction. Too heavy, too clumsy. The deer bolted. Ryden's head turned slowly toward the sound, jaw tight. Interrupting the sacred hunt was treason. Punishable by exile or death, depending on his mood. Every wolf in the pack knew this. The law had stood for 200 years. So whoever was crashing through his forest was either incredibly stupid or incredibly desperate. Another snap. Closer. Labored breathing. Ryden straightened to his full height, letting his Alpha presence roll out like a wave. Most wolves would have collapsed under the weight of it. But the footsteps kept coming, stumbling now, uneven. Then the trees parted. A boy. No, a young wolf, barely past childhood. Clothes torn, face streaked with dirt and something darker. Blood. His own or someone else's, Ryden couldn't tell. The boy's eyes were wild, pupils blown wide with fear or adrenaline or both. But he didn't run. Didn't cower. He ran toward the Alpha King. Stop. Ryden's voice cut through the night, flat and absolute. The boy didn't stop. He crashed forward 3 more steps, then his legs gave out. He hit the ground hard on his knees, hands slamming into the earth to catch himself. For a moment, there was only the sound of the boy's ragged breathing. Ryden's expression remained carved from stone. You know what you've done. I know. The boy's voice cracked, but he lifted his head. Tears cut tracks through the grime on his face. I know, Alpha. I know the law. Then you accept your punishment. Yes. The boy's hands curled into fists in the dirt. After. But please, please. His voice broke completely, and the next words came out in a desperate rush. They left my mother hanging in the woods. The forest went still. Ryden's eyes narrowed, his enhanced senses reading every micro-expression, every spike of scent. Fear. Desperation. But no deception. The boy believed what he was saying. Wolves punished that way were meant to die slowly. Meant to be found when it was far, far too late. Where? Not a question. A command. The boy pointed with a shaking hand toward the deeper woods. The old oak. The punishment tree. Something cold settled in Ryden's chest. The punishment tree was in the sacred grounds. And the only wolves who could authorize that were. Who gave the order? The boy's jaw trembled. The council, Alpha. While you hunted. While I hunted. While he was untouchable. While no one would question. While they thought no one would see. Ryden's eyes flashed gold, and when he spoke, his voice carried the weight of ancient authority. Show me. Ryden had killed wolves for less. The boy knelt before him, trembling but not from cold. His scent was a chaotic mix of fear, desperation, and something else, determination. The kind that made young wolves do stupid, reckless things. Like interrupting the sacred hunt. Stand up, Raiden commanded. The boy struggled to his feet, legs shaking. Up close, he was younger than Raiden had first thought. Barely into adolescence, still gangly with growth. His clothes were torn, and fresh scratches marked his arms and face. He'd run through brambles and branches without caring about the damage. Name. T. Terran. Terran Ashwill, Alpha. The words tumbled out in a rush. Ashwill. A low-ranking family. Laborers, craftsmen. Wolves who kept their heads down and stayed out of pack politics. Which made this interruption even more inexplicable. You know what you've done, Terran Ashwill. Yes, Alpha. The boy's voice cracked, but he forced the words out anyway. I broke the sacred law. I interrupted your hunt. I accept whatever punishment you. Your mother is dying, you said. Terran's composure shattered. Tears spilled down his cheeks, cutting tracks through the dirt and blood. They left her hanging. In the woods. Like criminals used to be punished. But she didn't do anything wrong, Alpha. She didn't. Raiden's eyes narrowed. Wolves aren't punished without reason. She fed the outcasts. Terran's voice rose with desperation. The Brennan family. They were starving. She gave them food. That's all she did. And the council, they said it was treason. They said she betrayed the pack. The Brennan family. Raiden remembered them. Exiled 6 months ago for refusing a politically motivated mating bond. The council had been furious at the defiance. Aiding outcasts is against pack law, Raiden said, his voice neutral. She was helping children. Terran's hands clenched into fists. Little kids who didn't do anything except have parents the council didn't like. She couldn't just let them starve. So she broke the law. She did what was right. The words burst out of Terran before he could stop them. Then his eyes went wide with horror at his own boldness. Raiden could have struck him down for that tone. Should have, by tradition. But something made him pause. The boy wasn't defending himself. He'd accepted his punishment the moment he stepped into the clearing. He'd known the cost and paid it willingly. But he was still fighting for his mother. Where is she? Raiden asked quietly. The old oak. Deep in the border woods. Please, Alpha. Terran's voice broke completely. Please, I know I committed treason. I know you have to punish me. But please, just help her first. Please. She's been there for 2 days. 2 days. Raiden's jaw tightened imperceptibly. The punishment tree was meant for executions, slow, public displays of pack justice. But those required the Alpha's authorization. His mark. His presence. Who authorized this punishment? The council, Alpha. They came to our den 3 nights ago. Took her while I was sleeping. When I woke up, she was gone. I tried to find her, but Terran's breathing hitched. The guards wouldn't tell me anything. Said it was pack business. But I heard them talking. Heard them say the woods. The old oak. And you came to me during the sacred hunt. I didn't know what else to do. Fresh tears spilled over. I went to the council first. They told me to go home. Said justice was being served and I should accept it. But she's my mother, Alpha. She's all I have. The raw anguish in the boy's voice was genuine. No deception, no manipulation. Just a child watching his world collapse and grabbing at the only thread of hope he could find. Even if that thread was the most dangerous wolf in the territory. Raiden studied him in silence. The smart choice was clear. Kill the boy for his transgression, resume the hunt, and deal with the council's execution afterward. The law was the law. Traditions existed for a reason. But something nagged at him. The council had moved in secret. During the sacred hunt, when they knew he couldn't be interrupted. When they knew no one would dare bring him news. They'd used his own laws as a shield. You understand, Raiden said slowly, that interrupting the sacred hunt carries the penalty of exile or death. Yes, Alpha. Terran's voice was barely a whisper. I understand. You understand that I could kill you where you stand, and no wolf in this pack would question it. Yes, Alpha. And yet you came anyway. Terran met his eyes for the first time, really met them, And in that gaze, Raiden saw something he hadn't seen in years from his own pack. Trust. The boy believed he would help. Despite the law. Despite the tradition. Despite everything. Please, Terran whispered one more time. She doesn't deserve this. Raiden's decision crystallized in an instant. Show me where she is. Terran's eyes widened in disbelief. Alpha. The old oak. Take me there. Now. Raiden's voice carried absolute authority. And pray to the spirits we're not too late. Hope blazed across Terran's face like sunrise. Thank you. Thank you, Alpha. Thank you. Save your gratitude. Raiden's tone was cold, controlled. You've still broken sacred law. And when this is done, you will answer for it. I know. Terran was already turning, heading deeper into the woods. I don't care. Just please save her. Raiden followed, his mind already calculating. If Elira Ashwill had been hanging for 2 days, time was critical. If she was even still alive. And if the council had authorized this without his knowledge, without his mark, without proper trial, then someone was going to pay for that. The sacred hunt was over. But a different kind of hunt had just begun. The ancient oak stood like a monument to cruelty. Raiden had seen it countless times, a sacred tree older than the pack itself, its massive trunk scarred with centuries of claw marks. Each mark represented justice delivered, laws upheld, order maintained. But the rope was new. It hung from a thick branch 15 feet up, swaying slightly in the night breeze. And at the end of that rope, Mama. Terran's scream tore through the silence as he stumbled forward. Raiden's hand shot out, catching the boy's shoulder before he could run headlong into something he wasn't prepared to see up close. Elira Ashwill hung limp in the moonlight, wrists bound above her head. Her clothes were shredded, her face swollen and discolored. Blood had dried in dark streams down her arms where the rope had cut into her skin. She wasn't moving. Is she? Terran's voice broke. Is she? Raiden's enhanced vision caught the subtle rise and fall of her chest. Shallow. Irregular. But there. She's alive. He released the boy and moved forward, his eyes scanning the scene with the precision of a predator analyzing a kill. Except this wasn't a kill. This was meant to look like one. The positioning was deliberate. Just high enough that her toes couldn't touch the ground. Low enough that death would come slowly from exhaustion and exposure, not a quick broken neck. Hours of suffering. Maybe a full day if she was strong. They'd wanted her to last through the night. Raiden's jaw clenched. His nostrils flared as he caught the scents layered into the clearing. Fear, blood, sweat. And underneath it all, something that made his eyes flash gold. Official seals. He moved closer to the rope, following the scent signature upward. There, pressed into the fibers where the knot had been tied. The waxy residue of council seal rings. Multiple rings. At least 3. Maybe 4 distinct scents. This wasn't a rogue punishment. This was sanctioned. Alpha, please. Terran's voice pulled him back. The boy was shaking so hard he could barely stand. Please get her down. Please. Raiden reached up, claws extending. One precise slash severed the rope. Elira's body dropped. Raiden caught her before she hit the ground, cradling her weight with surprising gentleness for a wolf known for ruthlessness in battle. Her head lolled against his chest. Mama. Terran crashed to his knees beside them, hands hovering over his mother but afraid to touch her, as if she might shatter. Raiden lowered her carefully to the ground. Her breathing was barely there, rapid shallow gasps that spoke of cracked ribs or worse. Her lips were blue-tinged from the cold. Elira Ashwill. His voice was quiet but commanding. Can you hear me? Her eyelids fluttered. For a moment, nothing. Then they cracked open, just barely. Unfocused, confused. Alpha. The word was barely a whisper, disbelieving. Why? Don't speak. Raiden pulled off his cloak, draping it over her trembling body. Save your strength. Her eyes drifted to Terran, and something like horror crossed her face. Terran. No. You shouldn't. The hunt. I had to, Mama. Tears streamed down the boy's face. I couldn't leave you. You'll be punished. I don't care. Raiden's hand settled on Terran's shoulder, firm, grounding. Enough. He looked down at Alira, noting every injury, every mark. This was systematic. Professional. The work of wolves who'd done this before and expected to do it again. His gaze lifted to the tree trunk, to the fresh claw marks gouged deep into the wood beside older, faded ones. A warning. A message. This was supposed to be justice. But Raiden could smell the lie of it in the air. He stood, his presence suddenly filling the clearing like gathering thunder. When he spoke, his voice carried the absolute authority of an alpha who had just made a decision that would shake the foundations of his pack. The sacred hunt is ended. Terran looked up, eyes wide. That never happened. The hunt continued until dawn, always. It was law. Raiden's eyes glowed gold in the darkness, fixed on the rope still clutched in his hand, the rope bearing the council's seals. And at dawn, he continued, his voice deadly quiet, the council will answer for this. Raiden's guards appeared within minutes of his howl, a sound that carried authority and urgency in equal measure. They froze at the clearing's edge, eyes widening at the scene before them. Their alpha, cloakless in the cold. A half-dead she-wolf on the ground. A trembling boy. And the punishment tree with its severed rope. Get the healer, Raiden commanded without looking at them. Now. And bring a litter. The younger guard hesitated. Alpha, the sacred hunt. Is over. Raiden's tone left no room for argument. Move. They moved. While they waited, Raiden knelt beside Alira again. Her breathing had steadied slightly under the warmth of his cloak, but her eyes were glazed with pain and shock. Alira Ashwill. He kept his voice level, clinical. Tell me what happened. She swallowed, throat working painfully. Council. Summoned me. 3 days ago. On what charge? Her eyes drifted to Terran, and something like shame flickered there. The boy grabbed her hand. Tell him, Mama. He needs to know. Alira's cracked lips trembled. I fed the outcasts. Silence. Raiden's expression didn't change, but his eyes sharpened. Which outcasts? The Brennan family. Cast out last winter for refusing a mating bond. Her voice was barely audible. They had children. 3 little ones. I couldn't watch them starve. So you brought them food? Yes, Alpha. She closed her eyes. They said it was pack betrayal. Aiding enemies. But they weren't enemies, they were just hungry. Raiden's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. The Brennan family. He remembered that case. The father had refused a political mating arrangement the council had orchestrated. The exile had been expedient. Did they give you a trial? Alira's eyes opened, meeting his. No, Alpha. Did they bring the accusation before me? No. Did they allow you to speak in your own defense? Her voice broke. They didn't ask me anything. Elder Voss just. He said the law was clear. That mercy to outcasts was treason. That, she swallowed hard. That I would hang as a warning to others who thought themselves above pack law. Terran made a sound like a wounded animal. Raiden's hand settled on the boy's shoulder again, anchoring him. How long were you there? 2 days. Alira's voice was hollow. They came at night. Bound me. Left me. Said. Her breathing hitched. Said the Alpha was hunting and wouldn't be disturbed. That by the time you returned, justice would be served. Justice would be served. The words hung in the cold air like an accusation. Raiden stood slowly, his mind working through the implications with predatory precision. No trial. No Alpha's mark. No proper accusation. Just council authority, executed in secret while he was bound by sacred law to remain untouchable. They'd used the hunt as a shield. And they'd assumed no one would dare interrupt it to tell him. The sound of approaching footsteps signaled the guard's return. The healer, a stern older woman named Kara, took one look at Alira and immediately set to work, barking orders at the guards to prepare the litter. Raiden moved away to give her space, his eyes fixed on the rope he still held. For distinct sense. He committed each one to memory. Alpha. Terran appeared at his elbow, voice small but determined. What happens now? Raiden looked down at the boy. At the dried blood on his face, the torn clothes, the desperate courage that had driven him to commit treason for his mother's sake. Now, Raiden said quietly, you learn what happens when wolves forget who makes the laws. He turned to his guards, and when he spoke, his voice carried the weight of ancient authority, the kind that had nothing to do with politics and everything to do with primal power. Send word to the council. Emergency session at dawn. Attendance is not optional. His eyes flashed gold in the moonlight. And someone find me the Brennan family. I want them brought to the pack house. Under my protection. The guards exchanged glances but didn't question. They knew that tone. And the rope, Alpha? The older guard asked carefully. Raiden looked at the evidence in his hand, at the seal marks that condemned 4 council members with their own arrogance. The rope, he said softly, comes with me. The healer worked in grim silence, her hands moving with practiced efficiency over Elira's broken body. Raiden stood apart, watching. His guards had arrived with the litter, and now they waited at the clearing's edge, uncertain, confused. The Alpha had ended the sacred hunt. That alone was unprecedented. But what he was about to do would shake the foundations of pack law. Alpha. The older guard, Marcus, approached cautiously. The council will need to be notified. They'll want to know. They'll know when I tell them. Raiden's voice was flat, absolute. Not before. Marcus hesitated. Yes, Alpha. But the punishment was authorized. Even if the procedure was irregular, the council has jurisdiction over. No trial. Raiden cut him off. No Alpha's mark. No proper accusation. That's not irregular procedure, Marcus. That's an execution dressed up as justice. The guard's throat worked. Still, Alpha, interfering with council authority could. Could what? Raiden turned, eyes flashing gold. Could upset the wolves who thought they could hang a mother to die while I was bound by sacred law? The wolves who counted on me being unreachable. Marcus fell silent. Kara, the healer, looked up from her work. Alpha, she needs to be moved. Soon. Her injuries are severe. Cracked ribs, exposure, possible internal bleeding. I can stabilize her here, but if she's to survive, she needs proper care. Then she'll have it. Raiden moved closer. Take her to the pack house. My personal healer's quarters. Every head turned. Alpha, Kara's voice was careful. Those quarters are reserved for pack leadership. Council members. Warriors of high rank. This wolf is under my protection. The words came out cold and final. As of this moment. The guards exchanged glances. Terran, still kneeling beside his mother, looked up with desperate hope. Alpha, Marcus tried again. Pack law requires. I am invoking the right of mercy. The forest went silent. The right of mercy was ancient. Older than the council, older than most pack laws. It granted the Alpha absolute authority to pardon any wolf, override any punishment, protect any life. But it hadn't been used in generations. Raiden's father had invoked it twice in his entire reign. His grandfather, only once. It was the rarest, most sacred power an Alpha possessed. And Raiden had just used it on a low-ranking laborer accused of treason. You can't be serious, Marcus breathed. Raiden's eyes locked on him. Do I look uncertain to you? No, Alpha, but the council authorized this punishment. If you override them publicly, it undermines their authority. It sets a precedent that wolves can't be executed in secret. Raiden's voice turned to ice. That the council answers to someone? That pack law protects the innocent as much as it punishes the guilty? Yes, Marcus. That's exactly the precedent I intend to set. The older guard's face paled. The council won't accept this. Then they can take it up with me at dawn. Raiden turned back to Elira, who was now secure on the litter. I'm summoning an emergency session. Full council. All witnesses. And they will explain in detail how they authorized a 2-day execution without trial, without evidence, and without my knowledge. He gestured to the guards. Move her. Carefully. If she dies before reaching the healer's quarters, I'll hold each of you personally responsible. They moved immediately, lifting the litter with exaggerated care. Terran stumbled to his feet. Alpha, walk beside her. Raiden's command was gentler than before. She'll want to see you when she wakes. But the treason charge, my punishment, still stands. Raiden met the boy's eyes. You interrupted the sacred hunt. That debt must be paid. But not tonight. Terran's jaw trembled, but he nodded and moved to walk beside the litter, one hand hovering protectively near his mother's shoulder. As the procession began moving through the woods, Marcus fell into step beside Raiden. Alpha, with respect, using the right of mercy for this. It will cause chaos. The council will see it as a direct challenge. The pack will question whether any punishment has meaning anymore. Good. Raiden's voice was quiet but deadly. Let them question. Let them challenge. Because if this is what passes for justice when I'm not watching, then maybe it's time we tore it all down and started over. You can't mean that. Can't I? Raiden stopped walking, forcing Marcus to face him. A child committed treason to save his mother from an illegal execution. He broke the most sacred law we have because he believed, truly believed, that I would help. That I would care more about justice than tradition. He gestured toward Terran's retreating form. And he was right. So yes, Marcus, I mean exactly what I said. If upholding council authority means watching wolves die unjustly, then that authority isn't worth protecting. Marcus was silent for a long moment. The old ways kept order, Alpha. Structure. Without them, we might actually have to think about whether our laws serve the pack or just the wolves in power. Raiden started walking again. I'm willing to take that risk. They emerged from the border woods as the first hint of dawn touched the eastern sky. The pack house loomed ahead, windows beginning to glow with early morning activity. News traveled fast in a wolf pack. By the time they reached the main entrance, wolves were already gathering, whispering, staring, trying to understand why the Alpha had returned from the sacred hunt carrying a convicted traitor. Raiden ignored them all. Kara, he called to the healer. Everything she needs. Cost is irrelevant. Yes, Alpha. Marcus. Send word to the council. Emergency session at dawn. Non-negotiable attendance. Yes, Alpha. Raiden watched as Alira was carried inside, Terran following close behind. The boy glanced back once, eyes full of gratitude and lingering fear. The Alpha nodded once, acknowledgement, not absolution. Then he turned to face the growing crowd of curious wolves. The sacred hunt has ended, he announced, his voice carrying across the grounds. At dawn, the council will answer for crimes committed in my absence. Any wolf who wishes to witness may attend. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Crimes committed by the council? Unthinkable. Raiden's eyes glowed gold in the pre-dawn light. And let this serve as notice, he continued, his voice dropping to something dangerous. No wolf in this pack, council or common, stands above the law. Not anymore. He turned and strode into the pack house, leaving shocked silence in his wake. The right of mercy had been invoked. And nothing would ever be the same. Dawn broke cold and merciless over the pack house. The council chamber felt smaller than usual, compressed by the weight of barely contained fury. 4 elders sat in their ceremonial seats, expressions ranging from carefully neutral to openly defiant. Elder Voss, the eldest, kept his hands folded on the table as if this were a routine matter. Raiden stood at the head of the chamber, the severed rope coiled on the table before him like a sleeping serpent. Behind him, to the shock of everyone present, stood Terran Ashwill. Bloodied. Exhausted. But unbroken. This is highly irregular, Alpha, Elder Voss began, his tone practiced and smooth. The boy should not be present for council proceedings. The boy, Raiden said quietly, is the reason we're having this proceeding at all. Elder Marin, a sharp-faced woman with silver streaking her dark hair, leaned forward. Alpha, we understand you're concerned about the Ashwill situation, but pack discipline is council jurisdiction. It always has been. Discipline. Raiden let the word hang in the air. Is that what you're calling this? He lifted the rope, letting it uncoil. The council seals were visible even from across the table, for distinct impressions pressed into the fibers. A 2-day execution without trial. Without the Alpha's mark. Without due process of any kind. His voice remained dangerously calm. Tell me, Elder Marin, which pack law authorized that? Marin's jaw tightened. The law regarding aid to outcasts is explicit. The law, Raiden interrupted, requires accusation, trial, and Alpha approval for any punishment beyond temporary detention. You know this. You wrote half of those protocols yourself. Elder Corin, younger than the others but no less calculating, spread his hands in a placating gesture. Alpha, the woman was feeding enemies of the pack. The Brennans were cast out for defying council authority. Supporting them is treason. The Brennans were cast out for refusing a political mating bond. Raiden's eyes locked on Corin. A bond you arranged to consolidate your family's territory holdings. Don't insult me by pretending it was about pack law. Corin's face flushed. That's not. And even if it were, Raiden continued, his voice cutting through the objection like a blade, exile doesn't make children enemies. It makes them children. Elira Ashwill gave food to starving pups. That's not treason. That's basic decency. We cannot allow sentiment to undermine pack authority, Elder Voss interjected, his tone hardening. If we permit wolves to aid outcasts, the concept of exile becomes meaningless. Order requires consequences. Order requires justice, Raiden countered. Justice requires truth. So let me be very clear about what actually happened here. He placed the rope on the table with deliberate precision. You waited until the sacred hunt. Until I was bound by law not to be disturbed. You sentenced Elira Ashwill in secret, strung her up to die slowly, and expected her to be dead before I returned. His eyes swept across each council member. You used my own laws as a shield for murder. That's a serious accusation, Alpha. Voss's voice remained steady, but his scent betrayed a spike of anxiety. One you cannot prove. Raiden gestured to the rope. 4 seal marks. I can identify each of your scents on this rope. Shall we verify them now, or would you prefer to continue lying? Silence crashed through the chamber. Elder Senna, who had remained quiet until now, finally spoke. She was the oldest, her face lined with age but her eyes still sharp. Alpha, even if mistakes were made in procedure, the fact remains. Elira Ashwill violated pack law. The council has authority to maintain order in your absence. In my absence, Raiden agreed. Not in my stead. And certainly not by circumventing every protection our laws provide. Terran's voice rang out, clear and strong despite his exhaustion. My mother didn't betray the pack. She fed children. That's all she did. Voss turned on him, eyes flashing. Boy, you have no voice in this chamber. He has my voice. Raiden's words froze everyone. I granted him pack-protected status last night. He speaks with my authority. The council stared. Pack-protected was a rare honor, reserved for wolves who showed extraordinary courage in service to the pack. It hadn't been invoked in decades. You granted status to a child who committed treason? Marin's voice rose with disbelief. He interrupted the sacred hunt. He saved his mother's life. Raiden's tone turned to ice. While the council, who should have been safeguarding pack welfare, was busy conducting a secret execution. Elder Corin leaned back, arms crossed. So what now, Alpha? You strip us of our positions? Exile us? All for trying to maintain order. Raiden studied him for a long moment. No, Elder Corin. I'm going to do something much worse. He gestured to his guards at the door. I'm going to let you explain yourselves under oath. And then I'm going to let the pack decide if your version of order is worth keeping. Voss stood abruptly. The pack doesn't question council authority. The pack, Raiden said softly, questions whatever I tell them to question. His eyes glowed gold, and the Alpha presence in the room became suffocating. Now sit down, Elder Voss. We're just getting started. The interrogation had stretched for hours. Elder Voss maintained his composure like armor, deflecting questions with practiced ease. Yes, Elira had been punished. Yes, it was during the hunt. But everything had been necessary. Everything had been lawful. The woman confessed, Voss said for the third time, his voice steady. She admitted to feeding the outcasts. There was no need for a lengthy trial when guilt was established. Ryden's eyes narrowed. When did she confess? When we brought her before the council 3 days ago. And who else witnessed this confession? Voss gestured to the other elders. All of us. She stood in this very chamber and admitted her crime. Ryden turned to Alira, who sat wrapped in blankets, still pale but conscious. The healer had stabilized her enough to testify, though every word clearly cost her. Is this true? He asked. Alira's voice was hoarse but clear. They never asked me to confess, Alpha. They told me what I'd done. I tried to explain, tried to tell them the children were starving, but Elder Voss said my reasons didn't matter. That aid to outcasts was aid to enemies. She's lying, Voss said smoothly, trying to save herself now that. Silence. Ryden's command cracked like a whip. He moved to stand directly before Voss, invading the elder's space with predatory intensity. You claim she confessed willingly? Yes. In this chamber? Yes. 3 days ago? Yes, Alpha. Ryden's eyes flashed gold. Then you won't mind if I verify that. Voss's confident expression flickered. Just for a second. Verify. Scent memory. Ryden's voice dropped to something dangerous. You know how it works, Elder. Strong emotions leave traces. Fear, guilt, desperation. They linger in a space, especially in enclosed rooms like this. He inhaled deeply, deliberately, his enhanced senses sorting through the layers of scent that permeated the chamber. Pack meetings, arguments, negotiations. And there, 3 days old but still present, terror. I smell her fear, Ryden said quietly. Fresh and overwhelming. The scent of a wolf who knew she was condemned. His eyes locked on Voss. But I don't smell guilt. I don't smell shame. I smell confusion and desperation. Voss's jaw tightened. Scent memory is not admissible. It is when an Alpha invokes it. Ryden circled him slowly. And I smell something else. Your anger. Your satisfaction. The scent of a predator who's cornered prey. This is absurd. You're lying, Elder Voss. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Voss's composure finally cracked. You can't prove. A knock at the chamber doors interrupted him. Ryden's lead guard entered, followed by 3 wolves. 2 adults and a young girl, maybe 7 years old. They were thin, clothes worn and patched, but their eyes held something Ryden recognized immediately. Hope. Alpha, the male wolf said, dropping to one knee. I'm Garrett Brennan. You sent for us. The chamber went silent. Ryden nodded. I did. Tell me, Garrett Brennan, do you know Alira Ashwill? Garrett's eyes found Alira across the room, and his expression crumbled. Spirits above, what did they do to you? Answer the Alpha, Voss snapped, but his voice had lost its authority. She saved us, Garrett's mate said, stepping forward with her daughter. When we were cast out, we had nothing. No food. No shelter. We were dying. And she, her voice broke. She brought us supplies. Food. Blankets. She risked everything. The little girl pulled away from her mother and ran to Alira, throwing small arms around her neck. Miss Alira, you're hurt. Alira's arms came around the child instinctively, tears streaming down her face. Ryden turned back to Voss. You said aiding outcasts made them enemies. That Alira's actions constituted treason. He gestured to the Brennan family. Do they look like enemies to you? Voss said nothing. You also claimed, Ryden continued, that exile must have consequences. That mercy undermines authority. His voice turned to ice. So tell me, Elder, what was the child's crime? What law did a 7-year-old break to deserve starvation? The parents defied. The child's crime, Ryden repeated. Tell me what she did. Voss's mouth opened. Closed. He had no answer. Elder Corinne tried to salvage it. Alpha, the law of exile extends to families. It must or else. Or else what? Raiden's eyes blazed. Or else children might survive. Or else we might remember we're supposed to be better than the rogues we hunt. He moved to stand beside the Brennan family, and the symbolism was clear. The Alpha, protector of the pack, standing with the outcasts. Garrett Brennan. By what authority were you exiled? Garrett's voice was bitter. I refused a mating bond with Elder Corin's niece. He said it was for territory consolidation. For pack strength. But my mate and I were already bonded. Already had a daughter. So you chose love over politics? Yes, Alpha. Raiden looked at Corin. And for that, you condemned a family to death. It wasn't death, it was exile. Without supplies. Without protection. In the dead of winter. Raiden's voice could have cut stone. You knew exactly what it was. He turned back to address everyone in the chamber. Elders, guards, and witnesses alike. Elira Ashwill didn't betray this pack. She upheld the only law that actually matters, that we protect those who cannot protect themselves. He placed a hand on the little girl's head. Even when those in power forget. Voss finally stood, desperation replacing his earlier arrogance. Alpha, you cannot overturn council authority based on sentiment. I'm not overturning it based on sentiment. Raiden's hand moved to his belt, where the rope still hung. I'm overturning it based on the fact that you lied under oath, authorized an illegal execution, and abused your power to punish a wolf whose only crime was having a conscience. He held up the rope, the council seals visible to all. You condemned yourselves the moment you pressed these seals into the rope. Elder Voss's face went pale. And now, Raiden said softly, you'll answer for it. The full pack gathered as the sun set. They came in waves, warriors, families, elders, pups held in their parents' arms. The ceremonial grounds hadn't seen an assembly this large in years. Wolves pressed shoulder to shoulder, their collective breath misting in the cold evening air. At the center stood Raiden, flanked by his guards. Before him, stripped of their ceremonial robes and insignias, knelt the 4 council members. Their hands were bound. Their heads bowed. But it was Elder Voss's eyes that held the most venom, fixed on the ground, burning with humiliation and rage. Raiden let the silence stretch. Let the pack see. Let them understand what happened when power corrupted itself. Wolves of the Blackmoor pack. His voice carried across the grounds without effort. You've heard the testimony. You've seen the evidence. You've witnessed the council's own words condemn them. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Fear. Anger. Confusion. Elder Voss. Raiden's gaze fell on the eldest. You authorized an execution without trial. You used your position to circumvent pack law. You ordered a mother strung up to die while her son watched helplessly. Voss's jaw clenched, but he said nothing. Elder Marin. Elder Corin. Elder Senna. Raiden addressed each in turn. You stood by and allowed it. You sealed the order with your authority. You believed yourselves above the laws you were sworn to uphold. The crowd's murmurs grew louder. Someone shouted, shame. Others took up the call. Raiden raised a hand. Instant silence. The punishment tree, he continued, was meant to be a place of justice. A reminder that our laws protect the weak as much as they bind the strong. But you corrupted it. Made it a tool for revenge and political convenience. He gestured, and 2 guards dragged forward a massive section of wood, the punishment tree's trunk freshly cut. The ancient claw marks were visible, generations of justice carved into the grain. But the fresh marks, the rope burns, the blood stains, those told a different story. This tree will stand no longer. Gasps erupted from the crowd. The punishment tree had existed for centuries. It was tradition. History. A symbol corrupted cannot be redeemed, Raiden said quietly. It can only be replaced. He turned back to the kneeling council members. Elder Voss. Elder Marin. Elder Corin. Elder Senna. By the authority granted to me as Alpha, and witnessed by the pack you betrayed, I strip you of your positions. Your council seats are forfeit. Your family privileges are revoked. Your voices in pack law are silenced. One by one, guards stepped forward and removed the silver insignia pins from each elder's chest. The small metal pieces glinted in the fading light before being dropped into a bowl held by Raiden's lead guard. Melted down. Erased. Gone. Elder Marin's composure finally cracked. Alpha, please. We served this pack for decades. You served yourselves. Raiden's voice held no mercy. And in doing so, you endangered everything this pack stands for. What of our families? Corinne's voice shook. Our mates? Our children? Your families bear no guilt for your crimes. They remain pack members in full standing. Raiden's eyes narrowed. Which is more mercy than you showed Elira Ashwill or her son? The crowd rumbled its approval. Raiden raised his voice again. From this day forward, no punishment shall be carried out without alpha witness. No sentence shall be passed without proper trial. No wolf shall be condemned without the right to speak in their own defense. He paused, letting the weight of the new law settle over the assembly. And anyone, council, warrior, or common wolf, who believes themselves above these laws will answer to me personally. The threat hung in the air like thunder. Then Raiden's expression softened fractionally as he turned. Terran Ashwill, step forward. The crowd parted. Terran emerged, cleaned up now but still bearing the bruises of his desperate run through the woods. His mother, Elira, stood behind him, leaning on the healer but alive. Healing. Terran approached, and every eye in the pack followed him. Raiden knelt to the boy's eye level, an alpha bowing to a child. The significance wasn't lost on anyone. You committed treason, Raiden said clearly, loud enough for all to hear. You interrupted the sacred hunt. By law, that carries the penalty of exile or death. Terran's throat worked, but he didn't look away. Yes, Alpha. But you did it to save an innocent life. You broke one law to uphold a higher one, the law that says no wolf should die unjustly while we have the power to prevent it. Raiden placed a hand on Terran's shoulder. That kind of courage is rare. That kind of loyalty is precious. And that kind of moral clarity is what this pack needs. He stood, his voice ringing across the ceremonial grounds. Terran Ashwill, I name you pack protected. You will be trained. You will be heard. And when you come of age, if you choose, you will have a voice in the council that replaces this one. The pack erupted into howls, approval, celebration, relief. The sound rose into the darkening sky like a promise. Elira's tears fell freely as Terran turned to her, and she pulled him into her arms. Raiden looked up at the first stars appearing overhead. The hunt had been interrupted, but justice finally had been served. 3 days after the judgment, the pack was still adjusting. The fallen council members had been escorted to the border territories, not exiled, but removed from power and assigned to manual labor under supervision. It was mercy tempered with justice, and the pack respected Raiden more for it. But today wasn't about them. The ceremonial grounds had been cleaned and prepared. A new stone platform stood where the punishment tree stump had been removed, smooth granite carved with the new laws Raiden had decreed. Every wolf who could stand was present, faces turned expectantly toward their alpha. Raiden stood at the center, his presence commanding without effort. Beside him stood Terran, scrubbed clean, wearing new clothes that actually fit. The boy's bruises had faded to yellow-green, and though he still looked nervous, there was something different in his bearing. Confidence. Purpose. Wolves of the Blackmoor pack, Raiden's voice carried across the assembly. We gather today not to pass judgment, but to give honor. He turned to Terran, and the boy straightened instinctively. Terran Ashwill. Step forward. Terran moved to stand directly before the alpha, and Raiden knelt, slowly, deliberately, until they were eye to eye. The symbolism rippled through the crowd. An alpha kneeling to a child was unprecedented. You violated sacred law, Raiden said, his voice clear enough for all to hear. You interrupted the hunt. You placed yourself between an alpha and his prey. By every tradition we hold, that should have cost you your life. Terran's throat bobbed, but he didn't look away. Yes, Alpha. But you did it knowing the cost. You did it because your mother was dying, and no one else would help. Raiden's eyes gleamed with something that might have been approval. You chose love over law, courage over safety, truth over tradition. He stood, gesturing for Terran to remain where he was. There are wolves 3 times your age who lack that kind of bravery. Warriors who've never shown that kind of loyalty. Leaders who've forgotten what it means to fight for something beyond themselves. Raiden's gaze swept the crowd, landing briefly on the space where the old council used to stand. You reminded us what this pack is supposed to be. He pulled something from his belt, a silver pendant on a leather cord. The craftsmanship was exquisite, the metal worked into the shape of a wolf's head with eyes of amber stone. This is the mark of pack-protected status. It hasn't been awarded in my lifetime. My father gave it twice. My grandfather once. Raiden held it up so the sunlight caught the silver. It means you speak with the Alpha's voice. It means you are under the Alpha's personal protection. It means no wolf in this pack can touch you without answering to me. He placed the pendant around Terran's neck. The weight of it settled against Terran's chest, and the boy's eyes went wide. His hand came up to touch it, fingers trembling. More than that, Raiden continued, it means you have earned the right to shape this pack's future. When you come of age, you will be offered a council seat, if you choose to accept it. Gasps erupted from the crowd. A council seat. To a child. To a low-ranking family. Unthinkable. Alpha, someone called from the crowd, an older wolf, hesitant but respectful. The boy has no training. No education in pack law. How can he? He will be trained, Raiden cut in smoothly. By me. And by every wolf in this pack who remembers that wisdom isn't measured in years. It's measured in the courage to do what's right when it would be easier to do nothing. He looked down at Terran, and his voice softened just slightly. You don't have to decide now. You're young. You have time to grow, to learn, to choose your own path. But know this, you've already proven you have what it takes to lead. Terran's eyes filled with tears. I just wanted to save my mother. I know. Raiden placed a hand on the boy's shoulder. And in doing so, you saved far more than that. You saved this pack from becoming something we would no longer recognize. Movement at the edge of the crowd drew attention. Elira Ashwill stepped forward, still moving carefully but no longer leaning on the healer. Her eyes were clear, her expression full of pride and overwhelming emotion. Raiden nodded to her. Your mother is recovering well. Thanks to you, Alpha. Terran's voice cracked. Thank you. For everything. Thank yourself, Raiden said quietly. You're the one who ran through the woods in the dark. You're the one who broke sacred law to save an innocent life. You're the one who believed that justice mattered more than fear. He straightened, addressing the full assembly once more. Let this be a lesson to us all. Power without compassion is tyranny. Law without justice is oppression. And tradition without examination becomes corruption. The pack was silent, absorbing the weight of his words. We are stronger than we were 3 days ago. Not because we punished the guilty, but because we learned to listen to the brave. He gestured to Terran, to Elira, to the Brennan family standing in the crowd wearing new clothes and hopeful expressions. We learned that outcasts can become family. That children can teach warriors. That one voice, raised in desperation, can change everything. Raiden's eyes swept the assembly one final time. And we learned that the smallest wolf among us might be the one who saves us all. He raised his hand, and the pack howled, a sound of acceptance, celebration, and renewed purpose that echoed across the territory. Terran stood at the center of it all, silver pendant gleaming against his chest, his mother's hand finding his shoulder as tears streamed down both their faces. For the first time in days, they weren't afraid. They were home. The next full moon rose clear and bright over the border woods. Raiden stood at the forest's edge, breathing in the crisp night air. The sacred grounds felt different now, cleaner somehow, as if the corruption had been purged along with the punishment tree. Behind him, the pack house glowed with warm light. He could hear the distant sounds of evening routines, families settling in, pups being put to bed. Normal sounds. Peaceful sounds. So different from that night a month ago when a desperate boy had shattered everything. Alpha. He turned. Terran approached from the tree line, the silver pendant catching moonlight. The boy had filled out slightly in the past few weeks, better food, less fear. He moved with growing confidence, though he still had the careful respect of a wolf who understood boundaries. Terran. Raiden nodded. You're out late. I wanted to see if... The boy hesitated, then gestured to the woods. If you were hunting tonight. I am. The sacred hunt? Yes. Terran fidgeted with the pendant. I know I can't come. I know it's only for the Alpha. I just wanted to watch you go. If that's all right. Raiden studied him for a long moment. The boy who'd interrupted the hunt now asking permission to witness it. The irony wasn't lost on him. Walk with me, he said. They moved together into the border woods, following the path Raiden had taken that fateful night. The trees seemed to part for them, moonlight filtering through bare branches. How is your mother? Raiden asked. Stronger every day. She's been helping the Brennans settle in. Terran smiled. Little Sarah follows her everywhere. Calls her Aunt Elira now. And your training? Elder Voss's replacement started teaching me pack lore yesterday. It's a lot to remember. You'll learn. Raiden glanced at him. You have time. They walked in comfortable silence until they reached a familiar clearing. The place where Terran had stumbled out of the trees and changed everything. The boy stopped, staring at the ground as if he could still see his own desperate footprints. I was so scared, he said quietly. I thought you'd kill me. I thought I'd die and Mama would die and no one would ever know what happened. But you came anyway. I had to. Terran looked up at him. She's my mother. Raiden nodded slowly. That kind of love, that willingness to sacrifice everything for someone who can't protect themselves, that's the mark of true strength. You showed mercy that night, Terran said. When you could have struck me down for breaking the law, you listened instead. Why? Raiden was quiet for a moment, considering. Because the law exists to protect wolves, not to bind them into silence. When a law prevents justice, it stops being a law worth keeping. He gestured deeper into the woods, toward where the punishment tree had once stood. I've been thinking about what happened. About how the council used my own traditions against me. Against you. Against your mother. His jaw tightened. They were right about one thing. The sacred hunt made me unreachable. Untouchable. And they exploited that. So what will you do? The hunt will remain sacred, Raiden said firmly. But it will no longer be an excuse for wolves to suffer in silence. New protocols are being established. Emergency signals. Ways to reach me even during the hunt if there's genuine need. Terran's eyes widened. You're changing tradition because of what I did. I'm improving tradition because of what you taught me. Raiden's expression softened fractionally. You showed me that sometimes the bravest thing a wolf can do is ask for help. And the strongest thing a leader can do is listen. They stood together in the clearing, boy and Alpha, separated by rank but united by the memory of that desperate night. The punishment tree is gone, Terran said eventually. What will you put there instead? Nothing. Raiden's answer was firm. That ground will remain empty. A reminder that some things are better left behind than rebuilt. And the border woods. Sacred again. But not because they're forbidden, because they're protected. He looked down at Terran. Justice should never require secrecy. Terran touched his pendant, then looked up at the Alpha with something like wonder. Thank you. For everything. For saving Mama. For believing us. For changing things. Thank you, Raiden countered, for being brave enough to interrupt. A comfortable silence settled between them. Finally, Raiden gestured back toward the pack house. Go. Your mother will worry. Yes, Alpha. Terran turned to leave, then paused. Will you be safe out here? Hunting alone? The concern in the boy's voice, genuine, unafraid, made something in Raiden's chest tighten. When was the last time someone had worried about his safety rather than feared his power? I'll be fine, he said quietly. I always am. Terran nodded and headed back through the trees, silver pendant swinging with each step. Raiden watched him go until the boy disappeared into the shadows, then turned back to face the deeper woods. The moon hung overhead, full and bright. The hunt awaited. But this time, it felt different. Not like an escape from his responsibilities, but like a recommitment to them. Not isolation, but clarity. He had come into these woods a month ago hunting deer. He had left hunting justice. And tonight, as he moved silently through the ancient trees, Ryden Blackmore understood something he hadn't fully grasped before. The strongest packs weren't built on fear or tradition or unwavering law. They were built on wolves brave enough to question, brave enough to care, brave enough to interrupt when something was wrong. His eyes gleamed gold in the moonlight as he disappeared into the border woods. The sacred hunt continued. But now, it hunted for something worth finding. If this story moved you, like, share, and subscribe so you don't miss the next chapter in this world. And before you go, drop a comment. Where are you watching from, and what time is it for you? I read every single one. Until the next moon rises.